guys, I'm going to be quick today. I've got a schooling exercise for you, or several schooling exercises using one square. And this has been inspired by the BD convention. As you know, I've been watching that. I did a review on it a couple of videos back, so watch that if you're interested. And this exercise was being used to help train a horse towards learning the movement of canter pirouettes. And I thought it was such a good exercise. However, Mr. Coop here is not about to ever need to do canter pirouettes. Never. But I really like the exercise, and I thought there was lots of positives for helping the horse sit a little bit more, help with collection, help with their bend and their suppleness, and all that. And I thought, actually, I can make this exercise a little bit easier to do with corporal, which is what we're going to do today. So this is maybe a version of this exercise if you just want to work on your 10-meter circles, or if you want to work on your simple changes, or you just want to work on your horse's balance and collection and teaching them to be able to sit and wait and stay in that kind of collected canter on a 10-meter circle, things like that, rather than working towards canter pirouette. I mean, I might do a little bit of work towards the canter pirouette at the end just to see how Coop gets on, but that is the plan. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking because, like I say, I haven't got very long today. I'm going to video it so you guys can see and talk over the video and try and explain what I'm working towards, what I'm trying to do in that schooling session. But it's a good one. It's a really good one. I really like this exercise. When I saw it, I thought, oh, this is a good one to have down in the kind of exercise book. So here we go. I'm going to try and hopefully explain the different things I was doing within the square and how I was hoping it to help my horse and what I was sort of feeling down the rein and how he felt. So to give you, if you have not been on my channel before, this is Corporal. He's 22. I have had him for a very, very long time. He evented with me. Then he went to becoming a dressage horse. Then I retired him, and then about 3 or 4 months ago I had a bit of a midlife crisis and decided I needed him back, and he has qualified for the regionals, which is next month. So I'm constantly looking for new exercises to help strengthen him and build him back up. He is quite weak due to having quite a bit of time off just because I had retired him. He lost a lot of muscle, and I'm finding it quite hard to kind of develop him back up again. It's taking a lot longer because of his age and everything. So all these sort of exercises are brilliant for him. So this square, I was aiming for it to be around 10 meters. So when you're working towards the canter pirouettes with the BD convention, theirs was about 8 meters, because obviously they needed to be that little bit smaller, but obviously I'm not working towards that, so I don't need to be quite so small. And initially I was just walking around, just doing a bit of a warm-up with him, few circles within the poles, doing a few transitions as well, just to get him listening. Again, there you can see one of the great things about having the poles there is I'm not the most precise rider, so I chuck transitions in wherever, and by having the poles there, it made me be that little bit more accurate and think, right, at that pole I'm going to do that transition, at that pole I'm going to do a halt, and so I had to be much more precise, which I'm not very good at doing normally. Then I started to just walk around the outside of the poles. This is so much harder than it looks. This is a way to wake up a sleepy outside leg. So if you find your outside leg tends to fall asleep, this will make it work. And it's nearly a great way to start introducing your horse into quarter walk pirouettes, because you can really make them kind of turn on their hindquarters as they get to each corner. You can see here Corporal really stepping through and under as he turns each corner. A little bit tight in his neck to begin with, but this was still part of my warm-up routine. And then I took him back up into the square box, and again just now asking for a little bit of shaping towards pirouette, so asking for the quarters to come in, and I was sort of trying to get him to walk around that polypod that was in the middle, just keeping his quarters in a little bit more, so getting a nice bit of shaping through his body, and then taking him back out. So not doing it for too long. I didn't want to put him under too much pressure, but just, you can see here, he was much weaker on the right side. So he struggled with his suppleness and his bend, and you can see a bit more resistance through his neck and head. He was a bit more moving the head around just because he was finding that little bit harder. Then we moved on to adding a few transitions in, so entering the square in trot, doing a transition to walk at the first pole, and then I just waited till I felt like he was relaxed and he was listening before asking a transition back into trot and taking him out of the square. And making sure that when I left the square that I rode him forward and straight, and then sort of opened him back up again, because obviously this is a lot of collected work within the square. It's important that when you take them back out, you allow them forward and sort of open them back up. When you're riding within the square, it's really important to make sure that you think about the outside shoulder of the horse hitting each pole, and that you want to work on that softness. So you want them nice and soft round your inside leg, and also making sure that they're bending through their rib cage. So it's not about just the neck bending. You want to feel like the whole body is making that lovely soft rounded shape around your inside leg. I found that lots of transitions within the square was a great way to really engage his hindquarters, to help him bring that inside hind leg through and under so he took a little bit more weight. However, I quickly realised that the square was just going to be way too small for the canter work, so I quickly made it a little bit bigger just to make it easier for him. I think because we were doing so many 10-metre circles and so many transitions within it, I really found it made him so much more rounder over the back. So because he was starting to take more weight behind, he had this lovely softness over his back. Also, I had to have him a lot more collected than what I would do if I was just trotting large outside of my school, because there was no to do a transition at one pole and then turn by the next pole when it's so small in there. You had to have your horse really between leg and hand. They had to be collected, and a whole different degree of collection to what I would have had, like I say, if I was just trotting around the outside of my school. So it really got me sitting deeper and using my core strength to kind of ask him to sit that little bit more, to shorten that stride up so that I didn't lose him and I managed to fit in the turns. And you can see here, I sort of played around with when I chose to bring him back up into trot. So if he was settled and soft straight after the walk transition, then I might trot from the next pole. But if he was being a little bit mouthy or I didn't feel I quite had him, then sometimes I would walk half a circle and then I would trot. And again here, just making sure that he's making a lovely soft bend around my inside leg, that he's sitting nicely behind, also making sure that he's active. So in places I can see that he's perhaps not quite active enough behind. This is something that I can continue to work on as he gets stronger. Here you can see I've now brought into the canter work. So I enter the square in canter. I do a transition back to walk at the pole and then pick up canter again and again enter the square, do a transition to walk at one of the poles and then back into canter. And again here was looking for that transition down, that he stayed soft, that he took the weight behind so that he stepped into the walk. And then again, just as I did in the trot, I would ask for the canter to walk, do maybe half a circling walk, waiting for him to soften and be, just listening before asking for an upward transition into canter. And you can see here, especially in the canter, just how much he starts to sit. This exercise gets quite a bit harder when you're doing walk transitions and canter transitions within a very small space. Again, making sure that that outside shoulder of his hits each of the poles if I'm doing a circle within there. If you find your horse does drift a lot on 10-metre circles in canter, if you're working at elementary level, this can be a really good exercise to help improve them. Again, also making sure that he wasn't tilting in the frame. But I did find that I had to make sure this canter was so much more collected to get those downward transitions and then straight into a turn. Like, I had to really sit and collect him, and I felt like I had a whole different degree of collected canter than I've ever had before. You can see he gets a little bit rude towards the end. I think he was tiring and he just gets a little bit mouthy. I also thought I might play around a little bit with the positioning for a canter pirouette. So just asking him to bring those quarters in a little bit around the polypod. Just, again, asking him to take that little bit more weight behind, a little bit more collection, bit more sit from him. And you can see here, he really starts to sit when I do that. So the feeling I was getting was that I was working towards, possibly in the future, doing a canter pirouette. Afternoon, guys. I've come on to finish the video. Got a bit of sun setting there. It's very cold though. Very cold, but very beautiful today. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, comment below. I love reading everyone's comments and replying to them. I know it's very cheesy to say it, but actually it makes a huge difference when you hit the like button, simply because the YouTube algorithm works that the more people have likes and comments on the video, the more effort YouTube put into kind of posting your video or suggesting your video to other people. So it does make a huge difference. When people say it does, it really, really does. So if you've enjoyed it and you feel like it, then please hit that like button. I'm very grateful. I hope you enjoyed this schooling exercise video. Very good one. Really, really like this one. We should probably thank Michael Elberg for the kind of inspiration of it. It just did so much for my connection with Coop. Like, I felt like I had him so between leg and hand, and that he was really truly sitting on his hindquarters. Like, the hindquarters were coming under him so much more. I could see, he was lacking in suppleness. When I watched the video back, I could see the lack of suppleness, and I could see that he lacked activity behind. But being that he's not done this sort of exercise in quite a long time, I'm in no rush to kind of, what's the wording, like stress him into doing more or chasing him to do more. That was about as much as he could give. He was doing a nice job. It's a work in progress, so I can continue to work and strengthen him so that he can maybe be a bit more active behind. Obviously he's 22, so I'm not expecting miracles, but the walk to canters was so smooth. So smooth, and I felt like I could sit up really tall because he was so rounded through his back, and listening, and I had this such lovely collection. It was just literally the slightest of aids and he was there. Simple changes. He got a little bit cheeky towards the end, and you might have noticed I think I kept everything in, and a few times he just sort of ran through the bridle, and I got the feeling he was getting tired, which is why I stopped, because I didn't feel there was any point asking more of him. That was as much as he'd given so much anyway, and I really think it's really important not to keep kind of pummeling them with information and forcing them to do something when they're getting towards the end of a session. Sometimes they just cannot give anymore. But yeah, fantastic exercise, honestly, well worth doing. You have to kind of gauge the size of the circle to suit your horse. As you saw, I had to make my circle or my square bigger for poor Coop. But another time, if I did want to try and work a bit more towards the canter pirouettes, then you would need to make the square a little bit smaller again. I think they actually used much shorter poles to be able to do it with. But either way, fantastic exercise, well worth using. I don't think it really matters if you've got a dressage or show jumper or an event horse, or you just like a bit of playing around in school. That exercise worked brilliantly. So enjoy.